He was invisible. For 12 years, Samuel Rodriguez had pushed his cart through the Memorial Children's Hospital corridors, emptying trash cans and mopping floors while the real heroes in scrubs saved lives around him. The night shift janitor who never spoke unless spoken to, never complained about double shifts, never asked for recognition. But when 3 armed men broke into the pediatric wing at 3:17 a.m., hunting for drugs and finding 23 sick children instead, they made a fatal miscalculation about the quiet man with the mop bucket. What they discovered would become legend among hospital staff and remind everyone that the most dangerous protectors are often the ones no one sees coming. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we begin this incredible tale of silent strength and protective instinct, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. If you believe stories of everyday heroes deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who guard us from the shadows. Memorial Children's Hospital never truly slept. Even at 3 a.m., the building hummed with the quiet activity of healing. Ventilators breathing for tiny patients, monitors tracking heartbeats, nurses padding softly between rooms with medications and comfort. The night shift carried a different energy than the controlled chaos of daytime operations. Quieter, more intimate, with a skeleton crew of dedicated professionals who chose to work when the world was dreaming. Samuel Rodriguez had been part of that night shift for 12 years. He arrived every evening at 11 p.m., clocked in without ceremony, and spent the next 8 hours ensuring that the hospital remained clean, safe, and functional. His territory covered 3 floors, but his heart belonged to the pediatric wing. 4 corridors of rooms filled with children fighting battles that would break most adults. At 52, Samuel was unremarkable in every visible way. Average height, graying hair kept neat beneath a baseball cap, wearing the same navy blue uniform that identified him as housekeeping staff. He spoke softly when spoken to, smiled genuinely when nurses acknowledged him, and moved through the hospital with the practiced invisibility of someone who understood that his job was to support the real heroes, not compete with them. But invisibility, Samuel had learned long ago, was the most powerful camouflage in the world. The children knew him differently than the adults did. To Dr. Patricia Williams, the pediatric intensive care attending, he was simply Sam, reliable, thorough, someone who could be counted on to clean up medical emergencies without getting in the way. To Nurse Jennifer Park, who ran the night shift with military efficiency, he was the man who somehow always appeared when extra hands were needed, whether for moving equipment or comforting a scared child while medical procedures were performed. But to 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez, no relation, despite the shared surname, he was Mr. Sam, the night angel who told whispered stories while her chemotherapy treatments made sleep impossible. To 6-year-old Marcus Thompson, recovering from his 3rd heart surgery, Sam was the man who brought animal crackers and knew exactly how to fold paper airplanes that could fly despite hospital regulations about projectiles. Samuel had never married, never had children of his own. The pediatric ward had become his family. In the quiet way that profound connections form between people who understand that some kinds of love don't require biological relationships. He knew every regular patient by name, remembered their favorite snacks, understood which children needed extra comfort during the long, scary nights when pain made sleep impossible. What nobody knew, not Dr. Williams, not Nurse Park, not even the children who trusted him with their fears, was that Samuel Rodriguez carried secrets that would have fundamentally changed how they saw him. before he became the invisible night shift janitor, before he chose to spend his life protecting the most vulnerable patients in the hospital. Samuel had been Staff Sergeant Samuel Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance. For 8 years, he had been part of an elite unit that specialized in deep reconnaissance, direct action missions, and surgical strikes in hostile territory. He had served 3 combat deployments, earned a Bronze Star with V device for valor under fire, and possessed training in close-quarters combat, advanced marksmanship, and tactical emergency medicine that few civilians could imagine. His military records were classified at levels that made them invisible to standard background checks, buried in databases that required clearances most people didn't know existed. The transition from warrior to janitor hadn't been accidental. After his final deployment, Samuel had struggled with the psychological weight of decisions made in combat situations where there were no perfect choices, only necessary ones. The Veterans Administration had provided counseling, medications, support groups, all helpful, all insufficient for addressing the fundamental question of how someone trained to take lives could learn to preserve them instead. The answer had come during a volunteer shift at a children's hospital in San Diego, where he'd been assigned to help with maintenance as part of a veteran reintegration program. Watching nurses and doctors fight to save the life of a 7-year-old girl who reminded him of his sister's daughter, Samuel had experienced a moment of absolute clarity. He wanted to be part of something that built rather than destroyed. He wanted to use his strength to protect innocence rather than eliminate threats. He wanted to disappear into a life where his most dangerous skills would never be needed, but would remain available if children required protection. For 12 years, that choice had been successful. Samuel had found peace in the rhythms of night shift maintenance, satisfaction in supporting medical professionals who performed miracles he could never attempt, and profound meaning in the small ways he could bring comfort to children facing their darkest hours. He had successfully buried his warrior past beneath layers of genuine kindness and humble service. The Marine was so deeply hidden that Samuel himself sometimes forgot the man he'd once been. But some training never truly disappears. It just waits quietly until circumstances require its awakening. Tuesday night began like every other night shift Samuel had worked in 12 years. He clocked in at 11:07 p.m., collected his equipment from the housekeeping closet, and began his systematic progression through Memorial Children's Hospital. The routine was comforting in its predictability. 3rd floor first, working his way down to the pediatric intensive care unit on the 1st floor, timing his movements to avoid disrupting the careful choreography of medical care. The 3rd floor housed older children, teenagers mostly, dealing with injuries and illnesses that required less intensive monitoring. Samuel moved quietly between rooms, emptying trash receptacles, restocking supplies, and occasionally pausing to check on patients who were awake and restless. 16-year-old Alex Martinez was reading by the soft glow of his bedside lamp, preparing for SATs despite the leg injury that had sidelined his football season. "Evening, Mr. Sam," Alex whispered as Samuel appeared in his doorway. "Evening, Alex. How's the studying going?" "Better than physical therapy." Alex grinned. "Think I'll actually be ready for college applications." Samuel smiled back, noting with satisfaction that Alex's color was good, his spirits high. Recovery was proceeding exactly as Dr. Williams had predicted. "Smart kids like you always figure it out. Get some sleep soon, though." Brain needs rest to process all that information. The second floor brought Samuel to the general pediatric units, where children with less critical conditions spent days or weeks recovering from surgeries, managing chronic conditions, or undergoing treatments that required hospital supervision. These patients were often his favorites, sick enough to need serious medical attention, but healthy enough to maintain the curiosity and resilience that made children remarkable. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez was awake, as Samuel had expected. Chemotherapy treatments had disrupted her sleep cycle, leaving her alert and anxious during the quiet hours when the hospital felt most like a scary place. Samuel found her sitting up in bed, staring out the window at the parking lot 3 stories below. "Can't sleep again?" he asked softly, parking his cart in the hallway and entering her room with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. "The medicine makes everything feel weird," Emma replied, "and I keep thinking about things." Samuel understood. Childhood cancer forced kids to confront mortality in ways that adults struggled to process. 8-year-olds shouldn't have to understand concepts like prognosis and treatment protocols. But Emma had been fighting leukemia for 6 months and had acquired a vocabulary that would have impressed medical students. "Want to hear a story?" Samuel offered, settling into the chair beside her bed. For the next 20 minutes, Samuel told Emma about a brave princess who had to take magic medicine that made her feel sick before it made her strong, and how she learned that real courage wasn't about not being scared. It was about doing the right thing, even when you were terrified. By the time he finished, Emma's eyes were heavy with approaching sleep. "Mr. Sam," she whispered as he prepared to leave. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you scared of anything?" Samuel considered the question seriously. "I used to be scared of letting down people who counted on me, but then I learned that if you do your best to take care of others, the scared feelings get smaller." Emma nodded with the solemn understanding that sick children develop faster than their healthy peers. "I think you're good at taking care of people." "I think you're good at being brave," Samuel replied, gently adjusting her blanket. "Get some sleep. I'll check on you later." The first floor brought Samuel to his favorite and most challenging territory, the pediatric intensive care unit. This was where the sickest children fought their hardest battles, where families maintained bedside vigils, where medical professionals performed the kind of interventions that separated life from death with precision measured in minutes and seconds. 23 children were currently patients in the PICU, ranging from premature infants requiring respiratory support to older children recovering from complex surgeries. Samuel knew each case, each family, each particular challenge that kept these young patients in the hospital's most intensive care environment. Nurse Jennifer Park greeted him with the tired smile of someone 6 hours into a 12-hour shift. "Evening, Sam. Quiet night so far. Knock on wood." "How's little Marcus doing?" Samuel asked, referring to the 6-year-old who'd undergone his 3rd cardiac procedure the previous week. "Better. Dr. Williams thinks we might be able to transfer him to the general ward by Friday. His parents are cautiously optimistic." Samuel nodded, understanding the complex emotions that surrounded pediatric medical care. Hope and fear existed in constant tension, with families learning to celebrate small victories while preparing for potential setbacks. That's good news. His dad could use some positive updates. "Speaking of updates," Jennifer said, lowering her voice slightly. "Security mentioned some unusual activity in the parking garage earlier. Probably nothing, but they're doing extra patrols tonight." Samuel filed this information automatically, his awareness sharpening in ways that would have been invisible to casual observation. 12 years of peaceful night shifts hadn't diminished his tactical instincts. They'd simply redirected them toward protecting a different kind of mission. "What kind of unusual activity?" he asked casually, continuing to organize his cleaning supplies. Vehicles that didn't belong to staff or families. Some individuals who seemed to be observing rather than visiting. "Like I said, probably nothing. Hospital security tends to be cautious." Samuel completed his PICU cleaning routine while mentally cataloging the layout and population of the pediatric wing. 23 patients ranging in age from 6 months to 17 years. 12 family members maintaining overnight vigils. 6 nursing staff members on duty. 2 attending physicians in the building. 1 security guard covering 3 floors of the children's hospital. And 1 night shift janitor whose military training had just activated for the first time in 12 years. At 3:15 a.m., as Samuel was restocking supply closets in the PICU corridor, he heard something that changed everything. The distinctive sound of the emergency stairwell door being forced open 2 floors above them. Hospital stairwells were equipped with alarms that triggered when opened improperly, but Samuel didn't hear any alarms, which meant someone had either disabled the security system or possessed the kind of technical knowledge that suggested this wasn't a random break-in. Samuel set down his supplies and moved to the nurse's station, where Jennifer was updating patient charts. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "I need you to lock down the PICU immediately." "What? Why?" "Someone just breached the building through the stairwell, and the alarms aren't working." "That's not an accident." Jennifer looked at him with surprise that quickly shifted to concern. In 12 years of working together, Samuel had never spoken with this kind of authority, but something in his voice, his posture, his sudden transformation from invisible janitor to focused protector convinced her to trust his instincts. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, reaching for the phone to alert hospital security. "Lock the PICU doors, move the mobile patients away from windows, and call for police backup. Don't use the hospital security radio. If they disabled the alarms, they might be monitoring communications." As Jennifer began implementing lockdown procedures, Samuel made a decision that activated training he'd hoped never to use again. He moved to his housekeeping cart and retrieved items that appeared to be ordinary maintenance equipment but served dual purposes for someone with his background. The mop handle was weighted steel that could serve as an impact weapon. The spray bottles contained cleaning chemicals that became effective deterrents when properly deployed. The utility knife clipped to his belt was balanced for throwing accuracy as well as cutting tasks. Most importantly, Samuel's keycard provided access to every door in the hospital, including areas where medical equipment and supplies were stored, including areas where someone with tactical medical training could improvise tools that weren't available to ordinary security personnel. Samuel Rodriguez, night shift janitor, had just become Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Force Reconnaissance Marine, tasked with protecting 23 children from whatever was coming down those stairs. At 3:17 a.m., 3 men emerged from the stairwell onto the second floor of Memorial Children's Hospital. They moved with the aggressive confidence of people who expected fear and got it, but their tactics revealed amateur planning and professional desperation. They wore dark clothing and ski masks, carried weapons that included knives and what appeared to be a stolen security guard's pistol, and demonstrated the kind of nervous energy that made dangerous people even more unpredictable. The leader was tall and wiry, with prison tattoos visible on his forearms and the hyper-alert posture of someone accustomed to violence. His companions flanked him with practiced coordination, but their movements lacked the disciplined precision that would have suggested military or law enforcement training. These were street criminals who had escalated to a target that required skills they didn't possess. They had come for drugs. Memorial Children's Hospital maintained significant pharmaceutical supplies, including controlled substances that commanded high prices on the street. The pediatric wing was chosen specifically because it appeared to offer less security than adult facilities, fewer staff members to overcome, and patients who couldn't effectively resist or escape. What they hadn't anticipated was that their target selection had placed them in direct confrontation with someone whose life mission was protecting exactly the people they intended to threaten. Samuel tracked their movement through the hospital's second floor via security monitors at the nurses' station. The PICU's lockdown had been implemented smoothly, electronic doors secured, portable patients moved to interior rooms, nursing staff positioned to respond to medical emergencies while avoiding exposure to the intruders. Jennifer had successfully contacted police dispatch using her personal cell phone, but response time would be at least 8 minutes given the hospital's location. 8 minutes was an eternity when armed men were moving toward sick children. Samuel studied the intruders' movement patterns, noting their lack of tactical awareness and poor positioning. They were checking rooms systematically, but loudly, alerting the entire floor to their presence while failing to secure their escape routes or maintain communication with external support. Either they were incredibly stupid, or this was a desperation play by people who had run out of better options. Probably both. "Jennifer," Samuel said quietly, "how many children on the second floor?" 11 patients plus families. Most of the kids can't be moved easily. They're on IVs, monitoring equipment, post-surgical restrictions. Samuel processed this information with the cold efficiency of someone trained to make life and death decisions under pressure. 11 children who couldn't escape, families who would instinctively try to protect their kids and become additional casualties, nursing staff who were medically trained but had no experience with violent encounters, and 3 armed men who were moving steadily toward the stairwell that connected to the PICU. The tactical situation was clear. Samuel could attempt to coordinate with hospital security and wait for police response, hoping the intruders would limit themselves to property theft and avoid harming patients. Or he could implement a more direct solution using skills that had kept American military personnel alive in far more dangerous environments. The choice became academic when Samuel heard 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez scream from the second floor. 12 years of carefully maintained civilian identity disappeared in the time it took Samuel to reach the second floor stairwell. The night shift janitor who had told bedtime stories and folded paper airplanes was replaced by a Marine Force reconnaissance operator whose muscle memory included procedures for neutralizing armed threats in confined spaces with minimal collateral damage. Samuel moved through the hospital corridors with silence that would have impressed his former instructors. His housekeeping cart had been abandoned in favor of tools selected for specific tactical applications. The weighted mop handle, 2 spray bottles containing ammonia-based cleaning solution, and a ring of master keys that provided access to every room in the building. The intruders had made several critical errors that Samuel cataloged automatically as he tracked their position. They had failed to post a lookout, allowing him to approach undetected. They had bunched together in a single corridor, eliminating their ability to provide mutual support if separated. Most importantly, they had chosen to threaten children in the presence of someone whose entire military career had been built around protecting innocents from people exactly like them. Samuel found them in Emma's room.